Chapter 1. The Crater. He woke with the taste of gritty dirt in his mouth and the faint smell of burned earth drifting through his nostrils. For a long, disorienting moment, the world was nothing but ringing, a high, thin whistle slicing through silence, and the sensation of being suspended between dreams and death. When he finally opened his eyes, he found himself lying beside the jagged lip of an explosion crater. Dust floated lazily in the morning light. He didn't know how he had gotten there. He didn't know why he was alive. He didn't even know his own name. He lay motionless, letting the world slowly steady around him. Something warm trickled down the side of his face. When he touched it, his fingers came away streaked with blood, bright and fresh. His clothes were scorched, torn in places, but he could move all his limbs. A superficial wound, then, messy but survivable. He sat up, wincing as the forest spun around him. The slender deer trail behind him wound through underbrush and oak limbs. He knew this path. He had walked it countless times. But the memory of walking it today was missing. More splinters of memory came. Voices, footsteps, a sudden burst of white light, a concussive roar that shook the earth. He remembered an ambush. He remembered crawling. Then darkness. Then nothing. The attackers must have assumed he died in the blast. A man left crumpled and bleeding by a crater usually didn't get back up. He took a steadying breath. Survival demanded movement, and movement required clarity. Bit by bit, his mind pieced itself back together. He lived alone in these mountains, had lived alone for decades, in fact, since society buckled and collapsed under the weight of its own neglect and conflicts. He had learned to disappear into this land, to move like smoke through the Appalachian ridges, to survive by wit, instinct, and a touch of luck he rarely acknowledged. This wasn't the first time he had survived an ambush, but it might have been the closest he had come to not surviving one. He stood, shoulders stiff, head pounding. His hidden home, his redoubt, lay miles upslope, tucked deep inside a narrow valley and concealed behind natural rock. He needed to get there, needed shelter, needed safety. He retrieved his pack that had very clearly been rifled through, slung it over one aching shoulder, and began the long climb back toward home. He'd worry about what was taken later. Hours passed as the terrain shifted around him. The oaks thinned into pines, the air cooled, sunlight filtered through branches in soft shards. Birds called from distant hollows, and with every step his pulse steadied and his mind sharpened. By the time he reached the final bend of the concealed trail leading to his cave, exhaustion gnawed at him, but relief washed through him too. He was home. He was safe. Or so he thought. Standing on the narrow ledge by the cave entrance were two strangers frozen in fear and shock, a lanky teenage boy holding a handmade spear, and a girl a few years older, her posture low and protective, a slingshot drawn and aimed at his chest. He froze. They did not. The girl spoke first. Chapter 2. Strangers on the Ledge. The girl's voice was steady, sharper than the stone ledge beneath her feet. "Don't move," she said low, and with a menace that her body size probably couldn't back up. Her slingshot remained trained on him with unwavering focus. I guess her size didn't matter much with that in her evidently very capable aim. The boy beside her trembled slightly, though he tried to mask it with a firm grip on his makeshift spear. The man raised his hands slowly, palms outward. His voice came quiet and even, a tone tempered by decades of caution. "I'm not here to hurt you." The girl's eyes flicked over him, his torn shirt, the dried blood at the temple, the weariness in his stance. "You live here," she said, not a question. "I do." "How long?" He gave a small shrug. "Long enough." The boy blurted, "Are you hurt?" The girl shot him a warning look meant to hush him up, but the man answered anyway. Not badly. Looks worse than it is. He eyed them carefully. They were young, frighteningly young, to be alone in the mountains. The girl, perhaps 17, held her ground with the kind of protective posture only earned through hardship. The boy, 14 or 15, was thin but tough, with eyes too old for his age. He gestured slightly toward the cave. This is my home, but you found it, and you're standing on the only way in or out. If you wanted to hurt me, you would have done it already. The girl didn't lower her slingshot, but her expression shifted, considering his words. The boy pointed at the blood crusting his hairline. You look like someone already tried. The man let out a quiet, humorless breath. They did. Who? The girl asked. If I knew, they'd be the ones bleeding, not me. Awkward, standstill silence hung between them. The wind brushed past, stirring pine needles at their feet. Finally, the girl lowered her slingshot an inch, no more, but enough. We needed a place to sleep, she said. We saw the cave, didn't know it belonged to anyone. It belongs to me, the man replied, but I don't turn away good people. The boy glanced at his sister, eyes hopeful, hungry in more ways than one. She hesitated, weighing trust against survival. The man saw the battle in her face, the one every survivor fought daily. Why help us? She asked quietly. His answer came without pause. Because it feels right. She blinked, surprised. He continued, if it doesn't feel right, it isn't. I've learned not to second-guess feelings. That's something I've lived by for a long time. The boy's eyes softened. The girl's shoulders eased just a fraction. Finally, she said, we'll stay until morning, then we'll go. You're welcome to. Come inside. You both look half-starved. Inside the cave, the air was cool and dry, the walls shaped naturally by time and improved subtly by the man's careful hands. A fire pit sat near the entrance beneath a stone vent that carried smoke away. Shelves lined the back wall, filled with jars, dried herbs, bundles wrapped in cloth. A sleeping platform of furs rested near the far corner. The boy's eyes widened. You built all this? He did, piece by piece. The girl stayed near the entrance, keeping their exit open and to her back, still wary, watching him with sharp attention. She was used to danger, used to protecting the boy. He respected that. As he cooked a simple stew, dried beans, greens, a bit of rabbit, the man introduced himself. You can call me Hunter. It wasn't his birth name, but it was who he had become. The girl finally spoke. I'm Maven. This is my brother Luke. Luke nodded shyly. Hi. Hunter smiled faintly. Good to meet you both. Luke devoured the stew as soon as it was served. Maven ate slower, still watching Hunter, but with less hostility and more calculation now. After a while, Hunter asked, Where are your parents? Maven's eyes hardened, and her voice went low with pain. Gone. Hunter nodded. He didn't pry. Loss was a language spoken everywhere now. And you? She asked. Do you have family? He paused, staring into the fire. I did. Luke swallowed his food quietly, sensing the shift in tone. Hunter added softly, But life takes things, and it takes them whether you want it to or not. Silence settled again, but this time it felt shared rather than tense. Luke eventually fell asleep near the fire. Maven stayed awake, sitting cross-legged across from Hunter. You said someone attacked you. I did. Will they come here? He looked at the cave entrance, at the dark ledge beyond. I don't know, but if they do, I'll deal with it. Maven studied him. Why live alone up here? Hunter stirred the fire, watching sparks drift upward. Because loneliness hurts less than losing people. Maven looked down at her hands. I understand that. Hunter met her eyes. But you protect your brother with everything you have. That's not loneliness, that's strength. For the first time, her guarded expression softened. It ran through her mind. Is it possible there's good people left in the world? Thank you, she said quietly. Hunter leaned back, listening to the crackle of fire and Luke's gentle breathing. Two strangers had found their way into his hidden life, and already the cave felt different, not crowded, not threatened, alive. He hadn't felt that since, and he cut off that thought. And something in him whispered that this meeting was no accident. It was the beginning of an echo. Chapter 3. The First Threat. Dawn crept slowly across the ridge, casting pale gold across the valley floor. Hunter stepped outside the cave with quiet movements, letting the cool mountain air clear his thoughts. The stormy events of yesterday still lingered in his muscles, but clarity came with the morning light. He scanned the tree line below, his eyes trained by decades of solitude and danger. Nothing stirred except a distant hawk circling, its wings cutting slowly through the air. Still, unease clung to him like dew on the grass. Behind him, he heard shuffling. Maven emerged from the cave, arms folded against the chill. She studied him for a moment, reading the tension in his posture. "You think they'll come," she said. "I think someone was tracking me before the blast," he replied. "People don't plant explosives on a whim." Maven nodded. "Then we will help you watch. More trustworthy eyes, the better." He almost protested. Almost, but he saw something fierce and steady in her expression, something he recognized from his younger years. "All right," he said, "but stay sharp." Luke joined them soon after, stretching and blinking in the early light. He looked healthier already. Young bodies healed fast, especially when fed and safe. "What are we doing today?" he asked eagerly. "Learning," Hunter said. "If you're staying here a while, you need to know how the land works." Luke straightened, excitement in his eyes. "Really? You mean you'll teach us?" Maven gave a small, grateful smile. Hunter nodded. "It's better you know how to avoid danger, and how to handle it when it finds you." Into the forest. They moved quietly through the woods, Hunter leading with slow, deliberate steps. The forest was thick with life. Deer tracks crisscrossed the soft ground, birds darted through shafts of sunlight, and the smell of damp leaves clung to everything. "Lesson 1, Hunter said. "This place feeds you, hides you, and warns you, but only if you pay attention." He pointed to a patch of underbrush. "Luke, what do you see?" The boy crouched, studying the area with furrowed brows. "Tracks," Luke said. "They look small. Maybe a deer?" "Good. Young doe. Passed through this morning." Maven studied the ground as well. "The soil's damp, clear prints, but isn't that odd?" Hunter smiled softly. "Go on." "The branches," she continued. "They're bent on the wrong side." Hunter nodded, impressed. Something else came through. Big, heavier than the deer. Luke swallowed. "A bear?" "Possibly," Hunter said, "or a person who didn't know they were announcing themselves. Either way, you pay attention to both kinds of signs." They continued deeper into the trees. Hunter showed them edible roots, healing herbs, the faint shimmer of a natural spring hidden between boulders. Luke collected wild onions, grinning proudly when Hunter nodded approvingly. Maven watched everything, attentive and analytical, storing each lesson like a treasure. Tracks that shouldn't be there. They reached a rocky overlook mid-morning, and Hunter paused. Below them, the forest trail twisted into shadow, but something caught his eye. A set of boot prints, deep, fresh, leading towards the direction of the blast site. Maven crouched beside him. "These weren't here yesterday," she whispered. "No," Hunter agreed. "Someone was tracking me before the blast." Luke's voice was quiet. "Are they coming for us?" Hunter brushed his fingers over the tracks. The spacing was wide, step lengths confident, not a frightened wanderer, a trained walker, competent, armed likely. "Maybe," Hunter said, "or maybe they're looking for a body." Maven spoke softly. "And when they don't find one?" Hunter rose, scanning the low ridge. They'll know I'm alive, which means they'll start searching and find what they believe will be the resources that are keeping me alive. Luke's breathing quickened. What do we do? Hunter looked at them carefully. We prepare. Back to the redoubt, Hunter worked quickly, each movement purposeful. He reinforced the entrance, checked escape routes, gathered weapons, and handed Maven and Luke tasks without raising his voice. Maven secured the water supply, camouflaging the small stream-fed reservoir beside the cave. Luke gathered wood quietly, glancing down the mountain every few minutes. The fear in the air was real, but so was the resolve. Maven stepped beside Hunter as he tied a warning line near the trail. "You think they'll come today?" she asked. "Could be tomorrow, could be a week. And if they attack?" Hunter paused, then met her eyes. "Then we face it, together. We show them that they should seek softer spoils." Her throat tightened, but she nodded. "You've already taught us more than you know." Hunter smiled faintly. "Then we'll hope it's enough." Night on the ridge. That evening they sat in silence near the cave entrance. Hunter kept watch with his rifle at his side. Maven sat opposite, her slingshot ready. Luke, exhausted, slept between them, his breathing steady. The mountain wind whispered through the trees. Night settled deep and quiet. Finally, Maven broke the silence. "Thank you," she said, "for helping us." Hunter didn't look away from the ridge, but his voice softened. "I didn't help you out of charity." "Then why?" He took a slow breath. "Because it felt right." She stared at him, her expression gentle in the fire's glow. "You're a good man, Hunter." He shook his head. "Just a man who's seen enough wrong to know better." Before she could reply, a faint sound snapped the night in half. A twig breaking, soft, intentional. Hunter stiffened. "Maven," whispered, "they found us." Hunter lifted the rifle. "Stay behind me," he said, "and stay quiet." Footsteps approached, slow, deliberate, closing in through the darkness. Hunter steadied his rifle towards the darkness. A silhouette appeared at the curve of the trail. He didn't hesitate. He fired once, a warning shot. The intruder dove aside, returning fire instantly. The bullet flattened against stone, sending fragments skittering across the ledge. Small caliber from the sound of it. His was not. Luke jolted awake, gasping. Maven reached for him and pulled him into the deeper shadows. Hunter shifted his position just as another shot scorched the air. He checked sightlines with the practiced fluidity of a man who had survived ambushes before. 2 attackers. No, 3. They moved like men who knew how to kill. Breaking their formation, Hunter slipped out the cave's side passage, a narrow crack in the rock he had carved out years ago for this exact situation. He edged along a thin ledge above the trail, silent as a shadow. Below him, one of the attackers crept upward, scanning the darkness with a flashlight mounted beneath his rifle barrel. The light swept dangerously close to the cave entrance. Hunter waited, until the man took one step too far. The pressure plate beneath his foot sank with a faint click. A weighted branch swung from above, slamming into the attacker's chest. He fell backward with a sharp gasp, striking the ground hard. Hunter descended like a predator. He struck fast, one blow to the head, dropping the man before he could cry out. He dragged the body aside, listening. Another set of footsteps approached. Quiet, intentional. This one was careful, experienced. Hunter readied himself. The second man spotted the fallen attacker and swore under his breath. He crouched, rifle sweeping the shadows, his head turned towards the ledge. Hunter sprang downward. They collided with a crash of fists, knees, and elbows. The man swung the rifle like a club, striking Hunter's shoulder. Pain jolted through him, but he pushed forward, ignoring it like it never happened, slamming his weight into the man and grappling for control. They tumbled against the rocks, each trying to overpower the other. The man drew a knife. Hunter caught his wrist. For a moment they strained against each other, breath hot and ragged in the cold air. Then Hunter twisted, using the man's momentum to slam him onto the ground. The knife skittered away. Hunter struck once more, knocking the attacker unconscious. 2 down. He listened for the third. Silence. That was worse than noise.
danger at the back entrance. Inside the cave, Maven jerked upright as a shadow appeared in the secondary opening, a place only someone familiar with scouting or tracking would think to climb towards. A man emerged through the narrow crack, his face twisted in determination, a blade glinting in his hand. Luke scrambled backward, terrified. Maven didn't hesitate. She fired her slingshot, and the stone cracked against the attacker's knuckles. He cursed, dropping briefly, then surged forward again. Maven positioned herself between Luke and the intruder. The man lunged. She blocked his arm with her forearm, twisted hard, the way Hunter had taught her hours earlier. The blade missed her ribs by inches. She slammed her knee into the man's leg, but he was larger, stronger. He grabbed her arm, yanking her closer. Maven cried out, and then Hunter was there. He tackled the attacker from behind, driving him hard onto the cave floor. They rolled violently, the knife skittering across stone. The man scrambled to reach it. Hunter kicked it away and choked him with a brutal force that ended the struggle in seconds. Silence filled the cave like a held breath. Luke trembled, his eyes wide. Maven dropped beside him, panting, shaken, but alive. Hunter placed a steady hand on the boy's back. "You're safe," he murmured, "both of you." And for the first time in years, the words felt like truth, not just hope. The hard choice. By dawn, the three attackers lay unconscious but bound. Hunter dragged them far from the cave.
Chapter 5. The Bond That Forms. Spring arrived slowly in the southern Appalachians, creeping in with warm breezes and the fresh scent of thawed soil. Snowmelt fed the creeks, and new green shoots pushed through the forest floor. For Hunter, Maven, and Luke, the quiet after the attack brought an unfamiliar sensation. Peace. Not safety. Peace was never guaranteed in this world, but a reprieve, a breathing space, a chance to build something more than simple survival. Daily lessons. Hunter resumed teaching them as though the violence of the night before had only strengthened the necessity of knowledge. Luke grew eager for each day's tasks, up early and tackling the day with purpose. He was absorbing skills with enthusiasm and pride. Maven watched intently, analyzing every detail, asking thoughtful questions. Hunter showed them how to lay snares without leaving scent, how to move silently on forest duff, how to boil spruce needles for vitamin-rich tea, how to stitch torn packs, how to camouflage themselves with mud and crushed leaves. One morning, Luke pointed to a scattering of feathers. "What happened here?" he asked. Hunter crouched. "Hawk got its prey. See the cut marks on the feathers? Talons, clean grip." Luke nodded, fascinated. Maven inspected the ground. "But the prints, see them? Deeper on the right." The bird struggled. Hunter smiled. "Good eye." Maven shrugged, but there was a spark of pride in her expression. For the first time in decades, Hunter felt something close to purpose, not just surviving day to day, but passing on the knowledge that had kept him alive. After the storm. One afternoon, the sky darkened with an early spring storm. They were retrieving snares halfway down the ridge when thunder growled. Hunter's instincts tensed instantly. "We need to move, fast." The wind surged, and Luke stumbled as the wind surged, and Maven caught him by the arm. Rain fell with sudden violence, soaking them in seconds. A lightning bolt cracked the sky. Luke gasped, clutching his chest as though the air had been ripped from him. "Hunter, he can't breathe," Maven cried. Hunter moved immediately, scooping Luke into his arms. Luke's breaths were shallow, rapid, panicked. "Hold on, son. We're getting you home." The storm pounded the mountainside as Hunter climbed, slipping through mud and gripping tree roots for balance. When they reached the cave, he lowered Luke by the fire pit. "Boil water, lots of steam," he told Maven. She worked quickly, hands shaking. Hunter held Luke upright, rubbing slow circles on his back, speaking softly. "Breathe slow, in through the nose, steady now."
Minutes stretched painfully. Finally, Luke's breathing deepened. His eyes fluttered, unfocused but calmer. Maven knelt beside him, relief pouring from her in a trembling exhale. Hunter rested a hand on Luke's shoulder, feeling the tension drain from his own body. "You're all right. You just scared your lungs tight." Luke managed a weak smile. "Thanks, Hunter." Hunter brushed the boy's damp hair back. "You listen to me. As long as I'm here, nothing's taking you." Maven looked at Hunter with a gratitude so deep it hurt. "You are a good man," she whispered. He shook his head. "We save each other." And for the first time, she believed it. Signs of new trouble. Luke grew stronger over the next week. Maven helped him gather firewood, and Hunter taught him how to weave simple snares. Life settled into a rhythm again, quiet, purposeful, steady. But one afternoon, Hunter caught a scent on the wind that set his instincts humming. Gun oil. He stopped mid-step, his eyes narrowed. The forest air was full of pine and fresh earth, but beneath it was that faint metallic smell he knew too well. Maven noticed. "What is it?" Hunter didn't answer immediately. He crouched, gliding his fingers through a patch of disturbed earth beside the trail. Boot prints. Fresh. Several sets. He stood slowly. "Maven, Luke, back to the cave, now." They obeyed without question. When they reached the cave, Hunter began sealing the entrance with camouflaged brush and stone. He positioned them inside, weapons readied. Maven's voice was tight. "Is it the same men?" "I don't know, but someone's out there. Someone close." Luke swallowed. "What do we do?" Hunter met his eyes. "We trust what we've learned, and we stick together." Maven stood beside him, jaw firm, fear in her eyes, but courage in her stance. The footsteps approached. The forest stilled. Hunter lifted his rifle. Maven drew her slingshot. Luke tightened the grip of the spear Hunter had carved for him. Whoever came up the mountain that day was about to learn that they weren't fighting one man anymore.
The
They were
footsteps
facing
grew
a
louder
family.
as they climbed the narrow trail toward the cave. Hunter steadied his breath, lowering himself behind a rock shelf just inside the entrance. Maven crouched opposite him, slingshot drawn, her eyes sharp in the dim firelight. Luke stood farther back, spear in hand, trembling but determined. Outside, the forest wind quieted, as if holding its breath. Hunter whispered, "Remember, wait for my signal, stay low." Maven nodded once. Luke swallowed hard but didn't look away. A shadow emerged around the bend of the trail, then another and another. 4 men. They moved with practiced formation, each watching a sector of the ridge. Hunter saw the way they held their weapons, the way they scanned the terrain. Not scavengers, not wanderers, trained men. One spoke in a low voice. "He's up here, tracks end close." Another grunted, "Then let's finish the job." Hunter felt the old fire inside him, cold, controlled, rise. He waited until the first 2 intruders stepped into the narrow choke point on the ledge. Then he shifted his weight, brushing a thin tripline he had set years earlier. A cascade of loose shale crashed down the slope, startling the attackers into a defensive crouch. Hunter fired once into the air. "Back!" the lead man shouted. "He's dug in." Maven glanced at Hunter for direction. He whispered, "Follow me." They slipped through the cave's side passage, narrow enough to force intruders into single file, and emerged onto a thin ledge above the trail. From here, Hunter saw the attackers spread out into 2 pairs, one searching forward, one hanging back to watch the rear.
Hunter pointed to the rear pair. Maven understood instantly. He signaled 3 fingers, lowering them slowly. 3, 2, 1. Hunter dropped from the ledge with the force of a falling boulder, slamming into the rearmost attacker. The man hit the ground with a choked grunt. Maven released a stone from her slingshot, striking the second attacker square across the temple. He stumbled, dazed. Hunter moved fast, disarming the first man with an elbow to the shoulder and a boot to the wrist. The rifle clattered away. The second attacker swung a knife wildly, but Maven darted forward, landing another shot that cracked against his knuckles. Hunter seized the opening and knocked him unconscious. 2 down, but the forest erupted with gunfire. Inside the cave, Luke flinched at the sound, but he didn't run. He gripped the spear tighter and stood in front of the deeper passage, protecting the place Hunter slept, the place they now all called home. "Stay calm," Luke whispered to himself. Hunter said stay calm. Then the cave's secondary entrance rattled. Footsteps, scratching against stone. A grunt. Luke backed up, breath quickening. The narrow crack widened as a figure forced himself through, one of the lead attackers, climbing the back route that only a skilled scout might discover. He didn't hesitate. He lunged. Luke thrust the spear forward without thinking. The man knocked it aside, sending Luke staggering against the wall. Luke gasped, terrified but refusing to fall. The attacker stepped into the cave fully now, blade drawn. Luke shouted, "Maven!" Hunter returned. Maven heard Luke's cry above the gunfire. She sprinted through the side passage, heart hammering. Inside the cave, she saw the attacker raising his knife toward Luke. Maven unleashed her last stone. It struck the man's knife hand hard. He swore, rounding on her with fury. Maven stood her ground. He lunged for her, but before he reached her, a shadow filled the cave entrance. Hunter tackled the man with brutal force, slamming him into the stone floor. They wrestled, each trying to gain the upper hand. The attacker punched hard, nearly knocking Hunter back. Luke grabbed the fallen spear and hurled it toward the fight. Hunter caught it mid-motion. In one clean movement, he used the spear's haft to pin the attacker's arms, driving him to the ground until the man went limp. Silence fell. Luke trembled. Maven exhaled in relief. Hunter steadied himself on one knee, catching his breath. "It's over," he said, and for the moment it was. The questions that followed. At dawn, the fire crackled softly in the cave. Maven tended to Luke's scraped arm, while Hunter watched the trail from the entrance. The attackers, what was left of them, had been dealt with. Maven sat beside him. "Hunter, who were those men?" He shook his head. "People from a world that didn't learn how to let go of violence. They wanted you dead. I probably still do, but they're not coming back." Luke joined them, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Did we do good?" Hunter looked at him, really looked, and something warm flickered in his chest. "You did more than good," he said. "You did right." Maven smiled softly. Luke's face lit with pride. Hunter turned his gaze toward the sunrise. He had survived a lifetime by avoiding attachment, by keeping to shadows, by trusting no one but himself. But today, with 2 young lives depending on him, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was protecting, teaching, guiding, having purpose.
Chapter 7. Seasons of Peace. Time settled into a rhythm on the mountain. Days stretched long and gentle across the valley, each one weaving the 3 of them closer together. The danger of the ambush faded into memory, overshadowed by the new life they were building, one shaped by learning, hard work, and quiet companionship. Spring warmed into summer, summer softened into autumn, and the years moved forward like the steady flow of the creeks that wound through the hills. Hunter had lived alone for so long that he'd forgotten what it felt like to speak to someone daily, to share a meal, to share silence. But now, with Maven and Luke beside him, the cave felt less like a fortress and more like a home. Luke's growth. Luke grew taller, stronger, more confident with each passing season. His lungs improved, helped by a steady diet, clean mountain air, and regular exercise. Hunter taught him how to move silently through dense undergrowth, how to notch an arrow without hesitation, how to sense danger in the shifts of the wind. One crisp morning, Hunter and Luke tracked a deer through the woods. Luke studied the broken twigs, the indentations in the moss, the faint scent lingering in the air. "This way," Luke whispered. Hunter watched him with quiet pride. "Good. What else do you see?" Luke crouched. "The prints are deep on the right. The deer is favoring a leg." Hunter nodded. "Exactly. Means it'll take the easier path along the lower ridge." A year prior, Luke wouldn't have known any of that, but now he read the land like a book written just for him. Later that evening, after they returned to the cave with fresh meat, Luke said shyly, "Hunter, thank you for teaching me." Hunter looked at him, surprised by the sudden emotion in the boy's voice. "You're learning because you choose to," he said. "I'm just giving you the tools." Luke smiled, a little embarrassed but deeply proud. Maven's strength. Maven blossomed in her own quiet way. She had always been sharp and cautious, but now she became something more, calm, capable, confident. Hunter taught her everything he knew about herbal medicine, how to mend wounds, how to craft salves and tonics from plants that grew hidden among the rocks. She developed skills beyond what Hunter expected. She found new uses for herbs he had long overlooked, and she devised traps so subtle that even Hunter had to study them to understand how they worked. One afternoon, Hunter watched from a ridge as Maven adjusted a snare she had designed. She moved with patience and precision. "You've got a good mind for this," Hunter said. Maven's brow furrowed. "For traps?" "For everything," he said quietly. She met his eyes and smiled, a small, rare smile that told him she felt seen. Peace interrupted only by memory. Despite the peace they found, Hunter still checked the trails each dawn. He still listened to the forest for signs of intrusion. He still reinforced their defenses just in case. But over time, the forest gave no warning of new threats. The men who hunted him never returned. The mountains felt safe again. Safe enough that Hunter sometimes caught himself lowering his guard, a strange, unfamiliar sensation that made him both uneasy and grateful. At night, Maven and Luke occasionally coaxed him into telling stories about the world before the collapse. He never revealed too much, but sometimes he shared a memory. "My daughter used to braid grass like that," he would say, or, "Your mother would have loved this valley." Maven would listen carefully to his voice, not just the words, but the tone. Luke would ask gentle questions, careful not to pry too deeply. Each memory Hunter shared was an act of trust, and both siblings understood the weight of that gift. A new world rising. Travelers began appearing along the lower riverbed, small groups heading towards the distant settlements. They spoke of growing communities trying to rebuild, of small councils forming again, of fields being planted again. Maven listened with hope, Luke with fascination. Hunter listened with caution. "Do you think we'll ever join them?" Maven asked one evening. Hunter poked at the fire. "Maybe, when you two are ready." "What about you?" Luke asked. Hunter gazed into the flames. "I've lived more years than most. The world isn't rebuilding for me, it's rebuilding for your generation."
Maven placed a hand on his arm. "But we want you with us." Hunter nodded, touched by the sincerity in her voice. "For as long as I can walk beside you, I will." The move to the valley. The cave, while safe, grew cramped as our supplies increased. The emergence of new travelers made Hunter reconsider their long-term path. Over several seasons, they began building a small cabin farther down the valley, closer to water, closer to arable land, closer to the new world emerging. Hunter couldn't swing an axe like he used to, but he guided the work with the same steady wisdom he always carried. Luke felled trees, Maven shaped beams. Together they constructed a sturdy shelter with a stone hearth and wide porch overlooking the valley. When it was finished, Luke stepped back, hands on his hips. "It's beautiful," he said. Maven nodded. "It feels like a beginning." Hunter leaned on the railing, breathing in the view of the forest below, the patchwork of gold and green. "A beginning," he repeated softly. He knew the truth in that moment. The world was healing, and their lives were healing with it. Hunter's slow decline. As the years passed in the cabin, the seasons aged Hunter more quickly than they once had. His joints stiffened, deep aches settled into his bones, and climbing the ridge became a task he needed days to recover from. But Maven and Luke were always there, supporting him, learning from him, caring for him just as he had cared for them. And Hunter, watching them grow strong and capable, felt something he had almost forgotten existed. Contentment. The sense that his life had meant something, that he had left an imprint that would last. An echo. Maven sat beside him. "Hunter, who were those men?" He shook his head. "People from a world that didn't learn how to let go of violence. They wanted you dead." Hunter sighed. "Probably still do, but they're not coming back." Luke joined them, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Did we do good?" Hunter looked at him, really looked at him, and something warm flickered in his chest. "You did more than good," he said. "You did right." Maven smiled softly, Luke's face lit with pride. Hunter turned his gaze towards the sunrise. He had survived a lifetime by avoiding attachment, by keeping to the shadows, by trusting no one but himself. But today, with 2 young lives depending on him, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was protecting, teaching, guiding, having purpose.
Chapter 8. The Fading Light. Winter settled early over the valley, arriving like a slow and silent tide. Frost clung to the cabin's roof before the last leaves had fallen. The wind carried a cold edge that even the fire inside could not fully chase away. In those months, Hunter felt the weight of his years more heavily than ever. He rose later than he used to. He tired sooner. His breath shortened on simple walks he once made with ease. But he never complained. Survivors rarely did. Maven noticed first. She always did. "You should rest more," she said one morning, setting a steaming cup of spruce tea beside him. Hunter tried to wave it off. "Rest is for those with nothing left to do." "You've already done more than enough," she replied. Luke, now a broad-shouldered young man, quietly added, "Let us take care of the heavy work." Hunter looked at them both, the 2 people who had once stumbled frightened into his cave, who now stood before him strong, capable, and steady. He gave a small nod. All right, some rest then. But they all knew what it meant. Time was catching up to him. The world beyond the ridge. Travelers brought news of the settlements expanding. Gardens were being planted across small stretches of cleared land. Water wheels turned again in the old creek sites. Families were settling into cabins. A small council now worked to mediate disputes and help rebuild. Hope once a fragile spark, was becoming a flame. Luke helped strengthen bridges along the northern pass. Maven helped tend to injured travelers, applying knowledge she had learned from Hunter and expanded upon herself. They returned home each evening with stories of new beginnings. Sometimes they asked Hunter to join them on visits to the settlement. Sometimes he did. Sometimes he couldn't. One day, after returning with a basket of dried berries and small trading goods, Luke sat beside Hunter on the porch. "The world is changing," Luke said quietly. Hunter nodded. "It always was. You're just seeing the turning now. We want you there with us, for all of it." Hunter smiled faintly. "I'll be here as long as I can, and when I can't, you'll know what to do." Luke's eyes glistened. He looked away so his mentor wouldn't see the emotion threatening to spill, but Hunter saw it anyway. Hunter's last journey to the cave. One day, Hunter asked Maven and Luke to help him up the old ridge, to the cave he had carved his life into. "Are you sure you can make the climb?" Maven asked softly. "With help, I think I can." They walked slowly, supporting him over rocks and across narrow ledges. The old cave, hidden in its cradle of stone and brush, waited for him like an old friend. When he entered, he paused, breathing deeply. Dust motes drifted in the shafts of sunlight. The old fire pit lay cold. Tools were stored neatly along the walls. Furs still lined the sleeping platform. Memories lingered in every corner. "This was my world," Hunter murmured. "Before you." Luke stood beside him. "We only made it better." Hunter chuckled weakly. "Maybe so." He touched the wall with a trembling hand. "I thought I would die here, alone, and I was ready for that. But life had a different plan." Maven stepped close, steadying him by the arm. "I'm glad it did," she said. Hunter nodded, throat tight. The world deepened. Snow gathered thick along the ridge and crept down into the valley. The cabin's hearth burned constantly, its warmth keeping the cold from settling too deeply. Hunter now spent most of his time inside, resting beneath a thick quilt Maven had made. Luke carried water and wood, checking on him often. Maven prepared warm broths and herbal teas. Hunter knew what was happening. So did they. No one spoke it aloud. One night, as the wind howled beyond the cabin walls, Hunter motioned for the two to sit beside him. "You've become everything I hoped. Strong, wise, good." Maven's eyes shone. Luke blinked rapidly, swallowing emotion. Hunter continued, voice faint but sure. "I taught you what I could, but the world that's coming belongs to you now, not me." Maven took his hand. "Don't talk like that. You're still with us. For a little while, and that's enough." Luke leaned closer. "We're not ready." Hunter smiled gently. "No one ever is." The final morning. The morning came quietly, wrapped in soft golden light. Snow glittered outside the window. The cabin felt still, reverent. Hunter lay peacefully on his bed, breath shallow but steady. Maven sat beside him, holding his hand. Luke knelt at the foot of the bed, head bowed. Hunter opened his eyes, looked at them both, and smiled. "You've made me proud, more than you'll ever know." Maven pressed his hand to her cheek. "We love you." Luke nodded, tears slipping down his face. "We'll carry everything you taught us." Hunter inhaled gently, slowly. His eyes softened. "Good," he said. "That's all a man can hope for." His chest rose once more, and stilled. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full, full of every lesson, every moment, every echo of the life he had given them. Maven bowed her head,
shoulders shaking. Luke covered his face with his hands. The world outside continued its slow thaw, but inside the cabin, a chapter of their lives had closed, not in despair, but in love. Hunter's resting place. They buried him on the ridge overlooking the valley, a place touched by sunlight in all seasons. Luke carved a wooden marker with steady, reverent hands. Hunter, a good man, a wise man, our family. Maven etched beneath it, his echoes travel on. They stood in silence, wind moving gently through the trees, carrying their grief and their gratitude into the open sky. Hunter had lived a hard life, a meaningful life, a good life, and through the 2 lives he saved, his wisdom would continue forward, endlessly.
Chapter 9. Echoes into Tomorrow. Spring returned to the valley with quiet grace, melting the last of the snow into clear trickles that fed the streams below. The land stirred with new life, birdsong, budding leaves, the soft rustle of small animals moving through underbrush. And though the world continued forward, Maven and Luke felt the absence of Hunter in every corner of their days. They tended his grave often. Sometimes they spoke aloud to him. Sometimes they simply stood in silence, letting the wind carry their thoughts. Grief softened with time, settling into a kind of steady warmth, an ache shaped like gratitude. Life did not stop. Hunter would never have wanted it to. So they continued building the life he had helped create. The haven in the valley. The cabin became more than their home. Word spread quietly among travelers, winding along the trails between settlements. There was a place in the mountains, a valley sheltered by old ridges, where weary travelers found food, rest, guidance, and kindness. A place where no one was turned away. Maven and Luke did not set out to become anything more than what they were, 2 people honoring the man who saved them. But the world around them began to shift. Lonely wanderers arrived, drawn by whispers of refuge. The first was a girl no older than 12. She appeared one foggy morning, shivering on the edge of the clearing, holding a cracked tin cup to her chest. Maven knelt before her. "Are you lost?" The girl nodded. "Are you hungry?" A faint second nod. Maven extended a hand. She had that feeling that this was right. "Come inside. You're safe now." The girl hesitated, and then stepped forward. Her name was Ella, and she became the first stray they brought into their fold. Jonas, Cal, and Noah. 2 more came months later, brothers fleeing a militia group that had taken over part of the lowlands. Jonas, the elder, was protective and wary. Cal, younger and quiet, had a talent for fixing things, from broken clasps to old-world tools. Maven and Luke offered them shelter without hesitation. Then came Noah, a boy who said almost nothing when they found him wandering alone near the ridge. He was skittish as a startled fawn, always watching, always listening. But something in him reminded Maven of Hunter's early wariness. She welcomed him in gently, and over time Noah spoke a handful of words that meant more than any speech ever could. The haven grew, not because they wanted it to, because the world needed it. Hunter's lessons live on. As the years passed, Maven and Luke taught the children exactly as Hunter had taught them. Luke guided them through the trees, showing them how to read a trail, how to sense the presence of water beneath layers of soil, how to move without disturbing the forest's natural rhythm. "Listening isn't just with your ears, it's with your whole self," Luke said. Jonas excelled at tracking, absorbing every detail. Ella became skilled with a bow. Cal learned to repair tools better than any of them. Noah rarely spoke, but he mastered the art of moving unseen, something Hunter would admire deeply. Maven taught them about healing plants, how to stitch wounds, how to ease fear in others. She spoke to them about patience, inner strength, and the importance of listening to their instincts. She repeated Hunter's words often. If it doesn't feel right, it isn't. Over time, the children began to repeat it to each other. A place for remembering. One afternoon, the group carried lumber and tools up to Hunter's hilltop resting place. Together, they built a simple shelter with a slanted roof and open walls, a place where travelers or friends could sit out of the rain and look out across the valley. Cal carved a wooden sign and hung it above the entrance. It read, "The Listening Place, for those learning to hear the echoes of the past." Maven stood before it, tears gathering in her eyes. Luke rested a hand on her shoulder. "He'd like this," Luke said. He'd pretend he didn't, but deep down, yes, he'd like it. The children lit a small lantern inside and arranged smooth river stones in a circle, stones they had each carried from their favorite parts of the forest. It wasn't a shrine, it wasn't a monument. It was a reminder and a promise.
The next stray. Years after Hunter's passing, when vines clung to the cabin walls and the garden flourished with medicinal herbs, Luke and Jonas discovered a child hiding behind a fallen tree while checking snares along the ridge. The child, a girl with tangled hair and eyes full of fear, held a dull knife defensively. Luke knelt, palms open. "Easy," he said. "We're not here to hurt you." The girl trembled but didn't run. "Are you lost?" Jonas asked. The girl sniffed once, barely audible. "Yes." Luke extended his hand. "Come with us, we'll look after you." It felt right. The girl hesitated, then placed her small hand in his. Luke let a familiar warmth spread in his chest, the same warmth he had felt when Hunter once reached out to him. The cycle continued. Echoes carried forward. That evening, as the fire crackled, the children gathered around while Maven ladled stew into bowls. Luke told the newest stray the same story Hunter had once told them, how instincts keep you alive, how kindness is strength, how family isn't always the one you're born into. "And who taught you all that?" the girl asked quietly. Luke looked toward the ridge, toward the place where Hunter rested beneath the pines. "A good man," he said, "someone who believed we should live right even when the world doesn't, and he showed us how." Maven added, "He's the reason we're here, he's the reason you're safe." Ella, now older, nodded, "And one day we'll teach others, just like he taught us." The children listened, wide-eyed and hopeful. Maven smiled softly. Luke tended the fire. The valley glowed with the warmth of a family forged by survival and compassion. Hunter had lived a life of solitude once, but he left behind a legacy of connection, a lineage of goodness, a chain of echoes stretching forward into the world that was slowly healing. The final echo. As Maven stood outside that night, stars bright above her, she whispered into the cool air, "We are what we pass on." A breeze swept through the trees, gentle and warm. She closed her eyes and imagined Hunter standing beside her, arms crossed, that small, knowing smile on his face, and she knew, in the quiet, enduring way that mountains know dawn will come, that he was still with them, in every lesson, in every kindness, in every child they welcomed, in every life they touched. Hunter lived on, not in memory alone, but in the very future he helped create, an echo carried through generations, unbroken,
unending.